As you might have heard, Fender has started a new series called the Fender Standard series that look exactly like what they make in Mexico, but in Indonesia. So we're going to go through them and see what's good about them, what's bad about them, and what makes them different or the same than what you can buy from the Made in Mexico series. So with that in mind, let's get into the geeky stuff. This is the Fender Standard Butterscotch Telecaster. I thought let's go for the Butterscotch because that's a very traditional looking Telecaster. So obviously it doesn't come with a gig bag. Okay, which Fender Player Series doesn't come with that either. So let's go ahead, cut all this packaging. Okay, what are they giving you? Well, in the little Ziploc bag, you're gonna get your truss rod adjustment Allen wrench. This is their standard like catalog thing they give you. It just tells you about their warranty, making adjustments and stuff. Then you get the truss rod adjustment instructions. You get the Fender online lessons, some warning stuff, basically, causes cancers, don't throw it in the fireplace, stuff like that. So very straightforward, nothing spectacular. The color is really yellow. That's really crazy. It looks good. Like, it looks really good. Let me get rid of this box. It's poplar body, which is not great, but when I say not great, meaning for the cost, the lower price Squires have poplar bodies. You were hoping that they would make it out of alder and keep it consistent with the Fender Player Series. But this guitar, the way it looks, can I just show you this? It looks like pine. It's not, but because it's got a little knot right there. Looking from the top to bottom, this is a piece right here. Whoops, sorry. This is a piece. That's a piece, that's a piece, and that's a piece. It's a 4-piece poplar body. I thought for sure, going to Indonesia, I mean, come on, companies make guitars just like this in Indonesia for $399, no problem, Fender. I was really shocked. Poplar didn't really set me off, although I was like, I was hoping alder because, again, kind of giving somebody, something a little bit more affordable than the Player Series, but there's a lot of great Squires right now that don't have a 4-piece poplar body. The Butterscotch does look good though. I mean, it looks cool. It's very yellow. It's got a really cool hue to it. So let's go to this neck. So we have a maple neck. Okay, 2 pieces. I was gonna say there's no skunk stripe, so it has to be 2 pieces. So it's 2 pieces. The fretboard is 1 piece of maple, and then the neck is 1 piece of maple. This is a gloss polyurethane finish on the body, and then a gloss polyurethane finish on the headstock, satin polyurethane finish on the neck. The neck feels great. By the way, let's start with the plus. This feels great. Like, just holding it, let's get a guitar pick. Just holding it, first impression. Feels good. It feels... Okay, so we have a problem, but that's okay. We'll discuss that in a second. But feel, fit and finish, the feel of the guitar feels great. So they nailed that. And when I say feel, I don't mean like the quality. The quality feels good. But I mean, if you pick up a Fender, there's so many guitars that make a Fender copy. So many. But even Fender has trouble getting the Fender vibe down. There's a vibe to a Fender Telecaster or Stratocaster when you pick it up. There's a neck feel that, whether it's a little chunky, a little thin, that feel. This feels correct. Like, if you told me this was a made in Mexico Fender neck, I would have no reason to doubt you. And I like Squires a lot. I play a lot of Squires. We've done a lot of Squires. But most Squires, when you hold the neck, that's the one tell. That's the thing where you're like, yeah, it feels quality, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a Fender. And so, when you tour the Fender factory, if you get a deep tour like I've gotten, they keep all the necks from all the prototypes, the physical necks, even though they have them, the programs for those necks in the CNC machines, they keep the physical necks so they can do testing like that, feel them. And this is the modern C-Carve, we'll get into that. 9.5-inch radius fretboard, let's verify that. So this is 9.5 radius fretboard, so that is correct. The nut material is micarta. Micarta is used all kinds of things. One thing it's used for is handles on knives. It simulates the feel and look of bone. It's a laminate, basically. It's a man-made material, kind of like plastic, kind of like paper. Weird choice, because again, we see guitars coming from Indonesia for this price, sub this price with bone nuts. I think Fender missed an opportunity to make this guitar and make it better. It's really nice to see, like, if the decision was, will you buy a better quality Fender instrument made in Indonesia than over made in Mexico, over made in USA? In other words, make this, in fact, I think the opportunity they lost was make this pretty much, dead spec to the USA one and see what happens, right? That'd be interesting to see. Obviously, the problem with this is a lot of people are going to say it's made in Indonesia, and some people are going to have a lot of feelings about that, positive and negative, but it's really hard it's almost impossible at this point. If you ask me, like, what do you think first impressions compared to the made in Mexico? My first impression is, well, it's not spec'd like the made in Mexico, so it's a hard comparison. They're using the block saddles. It's an interesting choice, the way they went with this. I don't understand it. So what they did is they went with a satin saddle. And this is some of the stuff that Fender's done for over the years to make things visibly different, because it bothers some players, right? Like, in other words, like, these should be chrome. Why? Because if this was made in Mexico or the USA, they would do chrome saddles to match the bridge. We know why they're satin. They're satin because it looks visibly different than their other lines, and then that tells people, like, oh, these are less quality, so therefore buy a better product from Fender. And there's probably nothing wrong with the quality of these, but aesthetically, just looks off to me. 3-ply black pickguard. So we have black, white, black on that. Let's go ahead. Let's start with the setup. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check the relief. The guitar is in tune, so we always tune the guitar first, then we check the relief. In the past, I've been doing this for years on the channel, where I push down the first fret, push down the last fret, and just kind of tap on it to see how much play is in the string. And this neck has some play in the string, and so that means it has a little relief. What we decided to do is, so we're gonna be using a gauge now, which every time we use it, I have to quickly calibrate it. So what we're going to do now is check the relief on the neck. To do that, we're going to use this gauge. We put it on the first fret, put the other part on the 12th fret. So the relief came in at about 0.08 of an inch, or 0.20 millimeters, which is just slightly more than what we've seen on average, but not enough to where we would be concerned with either the intonation being out, the action too high, or there being issues. It just means that the neck is not perfectly straight. What this is about is giving you a reference. So with reference, the neck came adjusted on par with what we've seen from the thousands of guitars that have come through the shop. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the action. 2.25 millimeters, so a little high, a little above par, we should say. So looking at the high E, that's 2 millimeters. 2 on the B, about 2 on the G, 2 on the D, 2 on the A is set just a little higher than what we typically see at 2 millimeters. Everybody's kind of shooting for the same numbers, and those numbers seem to be important because the guitar ship well with those numbers. So in other words, if the action is too low, you might have an issue when it gets to you if you went from hot to cold climate and vice versa, wet to dry. Let's check the intonation. E is slightly out, A is in, close enough. D is good. So funny that E is out because it's a slightly higher action. It could be the action, just put it slightly out. It just might mean to go down. So only the low E is really out. Remember, intonation is also a personal thing. Some players need the intonation set to their exact playing style because, again, they hit hard, they play hard, they push light. There's a difference between being so out that the chords sound wrong. This is fine. So let's check the nut. In the past, we did the nut. What we would do is I would show you the trick where I would push down on the 3rd fret and just see if there's a little play between the string and the top of the fret. And if there's none, that's kind of ideal because you don't want to push any, if the slots aren't cut deep enough, you don't want to push anything sharp because then, again, your intonation will be out. So what we're going to do is check the nut slots to see how they did that. To do that, we just turn on this nice gauge. This gauge is really simple to use if you haven't used one before. You just push the plunger down as hard as you can and zero it out and release. And this E string is cut, showing the nut slots cut at 24 thousandths of an inch. Ideally, we would see 20 thousandths of an inch. When we go to the A string, 27 thousandths of an inch. We would like to see that at 20 thousandths of an inch. Looking at the D, 25 thousandths of an inch. We'd like to see that at 18 thousandths of an inch. Now we're going to look at the G, and that's at 27 thousandths of an inch, and we'd like to see that at 18 thousandths of an inch. Looking at the B is at 30 thousandths. We'd like to see that at 16 thousandths. The high E is at 29 thousandths, and we'd like to see that at 16 thousandths. So these are cut a little too shallow. I would say all these slots need to be cut just a little bit lower, but it's easier to file these down a little bit if you have an issue than it is to build them back up, because to build them back up, you either have to replace the nut or use some baking soda and some super glue. So I'm gonna say, again, not great, but not horrible. And playing it, I don't really notice a huge issue. In other words, I don't notice that I really feel like it's pushing sharp. And there is a small possibility that if we straighten the neck just a little bit, that would adjust a little bit of that out. So again, I'm going to give this setup out of the box. This is definitely for beginner intermediate. You pull this out of the box and you're playing, you're fine. You're fine. Again, the point of this is not to critique this guitar overly. It's just to explain what to expect. Let's see if there's any dead notes or bad high frets or anything. So let's go ahead and play them all. Wow, that's nice. No issues whatsoever. This current setup, there's no issues with the frets. As we go ahead and check to see how well they're polished. And when I said, uh-oh, earlier in the video, okay, so we have a problem, but that's okay. We'll discuss that in a second. So what we want to do now is do a scratch test. We just go ahead and just pick a spot. And sometimes you do it with a string and it's really scratchy. I mean, I would say almost unplayable. Like if you're doing vibrato, this is horrible. But what happens when I open up and just do feel the fret feels fine. And when I feel the underneath the strings are crusty. So it's funny, they're just using cheap strings. You can feel that the cheap strings are the bigger issue. So does it need a fret polish? It does not. Does it need new strings? It does. It does need new strings. Okay, let's go ahead and do the sock test. If you guys aren't familiar with the sock test, we use a nylon sock. Let's go ahead and do the test. Trying the treble side. We have, I mean, it's a 5 out of 5 or a 4.5 out of 5. I mean, 5 out of 5. Really good. Let's go ahead and do the other side, the bass side. And same thing, I'd give it a 5 out of 5. This is another thing we like to do. Let's go ahead and just check to see if there's any of the grub screws or anything sticking out, any saddles that are sharp, anything that would just feel weird. I know a lot of players are not going to be palm muting on a Tele, but just anything that feels unpleasant, that's, again, 5 out of 5. So that is really, really good. I'm glad to see that. That's fantastic. Like I said, this is a first impression unboxing. I usually don't do that in the deep dive, but first impression is, it's legit. You know, a lot of you are not going to care about the wood. I mean, tone woods, you know, a lot of players like that. Tone wood doesn't matter. I like to point out, I really don't care. I don't care that it's 4 pieces of poplar. That is not what concerns me. What concerns me is for the price. Like, I want to see the prices reflect what you're getting. And I think they could have done this for $5.99 with the volume Fender has and given you a 2-piece older body if they wanted to. You know, they just wanted to make a little bit more margin on the guitar. Hey, designed in California, made in Indonesia. That was funny that they designed. The tuners, they look like the Ping Fender tuners. It's weird to me if they are replicas, but they look like the Ping Fender tuners. Non-locking. So, strange to me they didn't do staggered, you know, at this point. My guess is they don't do staggered because it takes a few extra seconds for the worker to kind of make sure they're on the right, you know, the holes. Let's do the measurements. The nut is at 43.15 millimeters or 1.699. The 12th fret is at 51.52 millimeters or 2.028. So they're calling this the modern C. Well, we actually have a modern C template. My guess is it's going to be dead on, given the fact that they, So if you've played the original Made in Mexico standard Strat or the American standard Strats back in the day, this is that neck carve for sure. I mean, it's a little different. So a little different on the between the 1st and the 5th fret, but pretty much dead on past the 6th fret. So either way, though, it's going to be familiar. If you've had a Made in Mexico standard Telecaster, this neck is going to feel super, super familiar. The other thing I want to point out is that the fretboard edges are rounded over. I wouldn't say highly rolled like a vintage guitar, but definitely rolled over and pleasant to the touch. Again, to me so far, the neck is the star of the show. Let's go ahead and look at the thickness of this neck. Thickness of the 1st fret is 20.78 millimeters. millimeters or 0.818. Thickness of the neck at the 12th fret, 22.82 millimeters or 0.898.
Now let's take a look at those frets and see how thick and tall these are. So the frets are sitting in at a width of 0.103 or 2.61 millimeters. And the fret height is 1.23 millimeters or 0.048, which makes the fret have a medium jumbo height, but a vintage style width. And to you, it's going to feel like medium jumbo.
One thing that I want to point out though that's different is if you look at the truss rod adjustment, they are using a piece of walnut in there. And that may not sound like a big deal, but usually what you see is the Made in USA stuff have a walnut piece right here where the truss rod is adjusted, and the Made in Mexico's have a black piece of plastic there. Okay, so let's look inside the guitar. A couple things to note that is really interesting is when you look at the electronics cavity, the first thing I want to point out is that it is shielded. Let's take a close look at that. They are using shielding paint in there, and they have grounded the electronics to the shielding paint. Now, looking inside, what we have here is two 250K alpha pots with the capacitor for the tone control. Then we have three-way switch, which is a PC board based switch I am not a big fan of. Obviously, if you look at the Made in Mexico's and the USA ones, you'll see the mechanical switch that's more robust and lasts a lot longer. These always end up giving out. They start to wiggle and then short out. And they could last you a long time or they could last you a week. Wiring in here is very basic, nothing exciting. Let's take a look at the inside of the neck pickup. First thing I want to point out is that they routed it for a humbucker and a single coil in the middle. This is also shielded paint, and this is all connecting. They went through everywhere. See, they've even connected it here. They've grounded this too. So they really went out of their way for that part of the quality, which is cool. Looking at the neck pickup, it's exactly what we predicted. It's essentially like the old Made in Mexico Telecaster pickups where they're using two ceramic bar magnets and then 6 metal slugs, and they've attached the magnets to the slugs to magnetize them. And then looking at the bridge, they went ahead and shielded everything, which is nice. And then here's your ground wire to your bridge. And when you flip this over, again, a very familiar sight. Now, you'll see this metal plate here on the Tele pickup. And a lot of times when you see these, you think they're copper, but they're actually steel plated in copper. We have 2 ceramic magnets again on 6 metal slugs, but they did everything correctly because what they have is the 3 screws going through this bridge plate and then connecting to the bottom plate that the magnet's connected to and the ground is connected to. And so what this does is this increases the magnetic field like a Telecaster does. It's one of the great things about a Telecaster. You have essentially the magnetic field being created by the magnets or the magnets in these slugs, and then you have a magnetic field that's much softer created by the whole bridge. And that's a part of the Telecaster sound. So let's go ahead and look at these and see how these, what the meter is saying these are. We'll start with the bridge. So looking at the bridge, we have the resistance at 6.83K and then the inductance sitting in at 5.14. So that looks like what we see here, which is a pickup that has a good amount of winding, but a very powerful magnet. And then looking at the neck pickup, we have the pickup coming in at 5.06, which makes sense for a Telecaster style pickup. And then the inductance on this one coming in at much lower at 2.76. And again, it's just because they're a lot smaller magnets than these.
A new feature on the channel is I fill out everything you see in this video on these scorecards, including things like the weight of the guitar, which in this case was 7 pounds, 8 ounces, and any other information that might be worth knowing that maybe the manufacturer didn't put or just we found on this particular deep dive. What's great now is you can click the link down below and download the PDF of this if you are interested in having it, or you could just review this while it's scrolling.
Like I always said, none of that matters if it doesn't play and sound great. And so I'm going to talk about a few things. The tuning keys, they slip a little bit. And although I've had some issues with Ping style tuners or tuners in the past, these seem to be the most problematic. I'm not in love with these tuners. In fact, if I was keeping this guitar, I would definitely swap the tuners out for a better quality tuner. And that's a $70 minimum add-on to the price of the guitar. So factor that into your head. Let's go ahead and play it for you. We'll give you some sound samples. I'm running a Synergy Send 50 head right here and I'm into a 212 cabinet with V30s mic'd up with an SM57. I have a room mic as well in the room. I'm using the Soldano preamp. I'll use that for the mid gain and higher gain sounds with a little bit of probably reverb. And then I'm using the T Deluxe, which is the Fender style tone,
in the other preloaded cartridge, I should say. And that's going to be my Fender cleans with a little bit of reverb. So we'll start with the neck pickup. Let's go to the bridge pickup on the clean and see how that sounds. Let's go ahead and switch it. And now we have the overdrive. I'm going to go ahead and decrease the reverb on that. And we'll start again with the neck pickup. Let's see how this overdrive sounds. Okay, let's go to the bridge and we'll see how the bridge sounds. Here we go. And last one I want to do is switch over to the higher gain setting. I'm going to go ahead and add a delay, remove the reverb, put some delay. Here it is. We'll start with the bridge. Here's something more aggressive sounding with the guitar. Let's see how the pickups kind of react to the more distortion. Okay, we'll go to the neck pickup on that. A couple thoughts that I've had while doing this video. First, you know, I thought about it. If they took a Fender American Professional 2 Stratocaster or Telecaster and they stuck Squier on it, it wouldn't make the guitar not as good. It wouldn't change the guitar in any way. The brand wouldn't matter other than just the perception. People would perceive the American Professional 2 Telecaster with the Squier logo to be less valuable because of the brand recognition and value to that. But the guitar itself, picking up the guitar, you would pick it up and you would probably say to yourself, this Squier that is really a American Professional 2 Telecaster is the best playing, feeling Squier I've ever felt. I feel the same way about this. Sticking a Fender logo on something doesn't make it better. This guitar feels pretty much like a really decent midline Squier guitar. There is no deal here. This is exactly what this is the most Fender could charge for this guitar. If this guitar was $699, I would say they're out of their minds. They're out of their minds. At $599, I just think it's a little priced a little too high. At $499, I think the guitar is pretty cool. And that's where my value set's at. I don't know. I hope that information's helpful. Like I said, this was a little different. We're doing the Strat next. So if this video hits 2,000 likes, I will release that video. I'm actually going to continue to work after I'm done with this video. So I'll hurry up and edit it and get it out, even though we have a different video planned next. If I get 2,000 likes on this video, the Strat version of this video will be next. On that note, I want to thank everyone who subscribes to the channel, who becomes a patron and supports videos like this, and more importantly, those of you who hang to the end and just been around. Thank you for that. As always, thank you so much for your time. Till the next time, know your gear.